All right, Ella, welcome back to the show. We were just chatting about Cosmic Slingshot, your book that's out now, and I was just telling you that I've been reading it, and I think it's really thought provoking. It's super interesting, and I know you have some slides you want to show us today, which would be really cool. Can you just tell everybody real quick what is kind of like this thesis of the Cosmic Slingshot, and then maybe we can start getting into it a little bit.
Yes, well, thank you. Appreciate returning to your podcast. It's always good to talk to you. Well, it's part of a trilogy that I have put together. One of them is book 4 of my series, Covenants, which is where I started talking about alien implants and alien abductions and how they're related, connected, and rooted in past lives. Cosmic Slingshot proves reincarnation in the Bible because, as you probably know, Christians reject it. And so I go into the history of when and how and why they did that. And so that was around 570 AD when they were editing the Bible canon. And under the emperor of Rome, Justinian, and his empress, Theodora. And there's a couple of reasons why they rejected it and attempted to delete it. And, one thing we can always count on is human error. And so when the monks were ordered to delete all the scriptures relating to reincarnation, they were only as good as their understanding of the Hebrew and the original language. So suffice to say, they left about 24 scriptures behind, plus a whole chapter, Ezekiel 37, on the reincarnation of ancient Israel, which has already happened, including the army, because that's a very specific part of that prophecy, and the 2 Hebrew words that relate to reincarnation. They didn't understand them. One of the words was coined by King David, and it's Kafakela. And the word Kafakela means the cosmic slingshot. And so I titled the book after that because it was kind of hidden, but they didn't take it out. They just didn't understand it. And
Hmm.
everybody knows, who King David was and the famous story about him killing the giant Goliath with a slingshot. So it wasn't until years later, after he became king and his wife Abigail basically said to him on another battle that he was having, "Oh, the Lord is going to send your enemies through the cosmic slingshot and return them, back to you." So that's where the word originated from. And then there's another word that in Judaism is always used to describe reincarnation, and that's Gilim or Gil Nishamot, which basically is the wheels of the soul and the wheels within the wheels of the soul. This dovetails into Hinduism because the Hindus believe that the souls go around like in a wheel. They call that the wheel of karma. And when your dharma runs over your karma, maybe you can get off the wheel. Just an inside joke.
You said that I knew this, but I only know this now after reading your book. I had no idea about like the Council of Nicaea omitting this stuff in like 325 AD, and then there's another omission with the Council of Constantinople in what 550 AD. I didn't know any of this. And it's funny that I started reading this book when I did because I have some friends in this space and they were telling me to read other books kind of like this that tie in the religious texts into this conversation. And I'm starting to realize that is a this is a huge part of the conversation that I don't see anybody having. Not definitely not in the disclosure movement because a lot of these individuals are talking nuts and bolts, but there's a very spiritual aspect to this conversation. And that I think might be the biggest missed part of the story. And it's opening my eyes widely.
Wow, that's great. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, one of the things that got me into like made me decide to write this book was the end time prophecy about disclosure. one of the things our government, the US government, fears the most is catastrophic disclosure because they can't control it. They can't control the narrative. And it's one of the things that they keep under a lid because they're allowing strip disclosure, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
coming in layers. And psychologically speaking, that's a good thing because people can only absorb and understand and process so much. Like the end time prophecy talks about creatures, aliens coming from inside the earth and coming out of the ocean. And then it talks about the return of Christ with an armada of, they're called flying horses, but horses don't fly. So
Mm-hmm.
we are, or spaceships, and coming in the skies, coming to Earth to basically, that's the pivot point between the end of this processional age, which is Pisces, and the beginning of the next age, which is Aquarius. So Yeshua, was very specific about his return. And he said he was returning at the end of the age. Okay. So we get an idea of when that is. But then there's all these scriptures in the Old Testament that it's like repeated 3 times, the book of Zechariah, the book of Isaiah, and then it's repeated in Revelation. And it says this: they will look upon, first in Zechariah, it's in the personal, it's in the I am. They will look upon me, whom they pierced, and they will see me coming in the sky with all the hosts of heaven. The hosts of heaven are the angels, the armies, because the word in Hebrew translates to celestial armies. Okay. So they will look upon me, whom they pierced, and they will mourn on when they see me coming to the earth. So I look at that scripture and I go, wait a minute. How is that possible?
Right.
Because all those people, so pierced is a biblical vernacular for crucifixion. And
Mm-hmm.
that scripture is repeated 3 times. So it's a thing.
Hey guys, if you've been watching this podcast for a while, then you already know. I'm absolutely fascinated by the crop circle phenomenon. It's one of those mysteries that keeps pulling me in deeper the more I explore it. That's why I'm really excited about a collaboration between shapesofwisdom.com and Curious Dimension podcast. Shapes of Wisdom is a sanctuary for seekers of ancient knowledge and sacred symbolism. They've curated an inspiring collection of sacred geometry and esoteric art that aligns beautifully with the themes we often explore here on Curious Dimension. On their website, shapesofwisdom.com, you'll find thousands of different crop circle designs. Yes, thousands. Available on posters, t-shirts, jewelry, even coloring books. Whether you're into meditative art, symbolic meaning, or just want to surround yourself with something a little otherworldly, it's an amazing resource. Shapes of Wisdom and Curious Dimension have come up with 4 different t-shirt designs that invite you to explore the unknown and wear your curiosity proudly. And as a special thank you to our listeners, you can get 15% off your Curious Dimension t-shirts and Shapes of Wisdom apparel clothing purchases by using the promo code Curious1 at checkout. That's CURIOUS1 at checkout. Plus, if you're into digital art or want access to some of the most stunning crop circle visuals, use promo code Curious2 for 40% off the crop circle collections and big picture digital files available through the Curious Dimension link on shapesofwisdom.com. I'll drop all the links and codes in the description below so you don't miss a thing. So if you're drawn to sacred geometry, ancient symbols, or just want to wear your curiosity, go check them out. Again, that's shapesofwisdom.com. Now let's dive back into today's episode.
And how can all those people who are responsible, who are involved on whatever level, the conspiracy to crucify Christ, how can they all be on the earth watching him come at the end of the age when they all died 2,000 years ago?
They're coming back.
There's only one answer, and that's reincarnation. So that's a big part of the end time prophecy. And then, of course, the catastrophic disclosure of these creatures coming from inside the earth to the surface of the earth. And they're given orders. Okay. They're given orders by the Lord to punish the wicked So people have to be careful what they wish for. You know what
Mhm.
I like in terms of
Mhm.
closure, they want to meet an alien. They don't really care which alien, just show me an alien, Be careful for because it says that they're ordered to come out from the abyss and they're described. I mean, there's no other way to say this that they're an alien because they're not human, they're not angelic, they're not animals, so they're classified as an alien, right? They have the head of lions and the tails of scorpions and the wings of locusts, and
Mhm.
they come in groups. Okay, so there's like thousands of them, and they're ordered to punish the wicked on the surface of the earth, but don't harm the grass. Meaning,
Mm.
Lord doesn't want them to destroy any part of nature,
Mhm.
if any of the earth. They're only out to get the wicked. So that's a big piece of the end time prophecy. And when
Mhm.
it happens, that's catastrophic disclosure. So the whole thing about reincarnation, it's not just about us. I found out that it's about these other beings that were given a birthright to be born, to have a bloodline, to reincarnate on the earth. So there's this whole group of them that the Bible lists them and by name. So there's the Anakim. So the Anakim is Hebrew for Anunnaki. So that's the Sumerian and the Hebrew connected.
Those who from heaven came.
Yes. Which let's just call them ETs. Those who
Right.
have the heavens, they're extraterrestrial. So the Anakim, then there's the Raphaim, then there's the Nephilim, then there's the seed of Cain and the seed of Seth and the seed of Satan and the serpent seed. You've got like 7 different groupings there, hybrids, human hybrids coming in through human bodies. Okay. So I uncovered another layer of this by basically proving that reincarnation has been there all along. They
Mhm.
just suppressed it. And one of the reasons that they suppressed it was financial. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, besides the narcissism of the Theodora, I'm sure you read that
Yeah, she was the prostitute who rose to power in Rome. Is that correct?
yes, she became Justinian's empress. First, she started as a concubine, and then she became the Empress of Rome. And the narcissism got to her because the Romans had all these gods and goddesses that they worshiped, the whole pantheon. And
Mhm.
she wanted to be remembered when she died as a goddess of Rome, not as a peasant, because she
Mm.
was born as a peasant. So it irritated her that while they were editing the Bible, that they were talking about reincarnation. She ordered them to take it out. But and nobody knows except God what they actually did take out. So I fill in some gaps, all right, in the book, like when they asked, so like Yeshua, so the disciples talked to him because they all believed it. This was an ancient belief. All the ancient peoples believed in this. Okay. So just because the Church of Rome declared it heresy doesn't mean that reincarnation stopped. It just means
Right.
people stopped thinking about it, or in the church, right? They didn't want people thinking about it, mainly for financial reasons because they were selling indulgences. They were selling tickets to heaven. And reincarnation said if you have multiple lifetimes to work things out, to correct the soul. In fact, that's what the Torah says. So the Torah is the basis of the 3 major religions on earth, right? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And you cannot deny that the Torah talks about this. It's in the 5 books of Moses, and it has to do with teshuvah, which is the Hebrew word for correction. So people come back to get things right for whatever reason, in
Mhm.
whatever realm. Okay. It could be, and relationships is a big one because the Torah talks about soulmates and marriages and how important it is to honor your soulmate. And if you screw things up or you had your soulmate and then you got divorced or something happened or there was a betrayal, you get sent back to put it because soulmates are made in heaven. So they have to work it out on earth. So there's a whole like love story to this as well.
Mhm.
So that's relevant. And then, of course, punishment and karma and all these other issues are all in the Torah. These aren't Hindu concepts. And so Christians think that reincarnation is Hinduism or New Age. And it's like, it's old age and it's Jewish.
The book, the Torah, you said this combines, was it Islamic, Jewish, and Christianity, correct?
Well, it doesn't combine it. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam come out of it. So
Okay.
they use it as a basis of their moral law. They refer to the Torah.
So how many, I mean, and you cite a lot of work in this book, Cosmic Slingshot. How many like books or scriptures or text were omitted talking about reincarnation? I mean, how much, and then how much of this have we sort of rediscovered?
That is a great question. I wish I knew the answer, but all we know is what's left behind. But there is one piece I wanted to tell you about that it's kind of like a puzzle. You can figure it out because it makes sense. And that is, so here's this piece, which is the fact that the disciples, well, everybody talked about reincarnation in the past. Like, who are you? Okay, so what they said to Yeshua was, who are you? And this is in the Bible right now. This text is there. Who were you? Are you Elijah? And Elijah was, this prophet of God that is, his whole story is in the book of Judges and the Kings, and he's, they set a table for him every year at Passover because he never died. Elijah was one of the what I call frequent flyers. He never died. Enoch, Elijah, Melchizedek, there's no record of their death. They ascended. And Elijah came and went a few times. He would go up and then he would come back down because God put him in a mission and then he would take him. Okay. So the disciples said to Yeshua, who are you? Are you Elijah? Because he was doing all these miracles and Elijah
Mm.
used miracles. So his answer was, no, Elijah already came. That was John the Baptist. He identified the reincarnation of Elijah as John the Baptist. Okay. And that's in the Bible. He never answered who he was. Okay. So I am answering it in this
Okay.
because that's a missing piece that I believe they deleted it. So maybe he told them, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But
Mhm.
what makes sense to me is the scriptures. Elijah was John the Baptist. Yeshua said so. Okay. So we'll leave that. Whether he answered who he was or not, we don't know. But it seems like something was taken out of that conversation. So that intrigued me. So I went searching and I thought, well, one of the things about Bible study, it's like Bible study 101, uh,
Mhm.
that scripture must prove scripture. Otherwise, it's rogue. And we've talked before, that I'm a retired paralegal and
Mhm.
I've taken my skill set and put it into unraveling this mystery. And
Mhm.
so I was intrigued by this, the missing pieces, and also what's in the Bible and what's not in the Bible. And so there are rogue scriptures in the Bible that I prove are rogue, meaning there's no corroborating other scripture from the Old Testament. So the Old Testament and the New Testament are like a right leg and a left leg. They have to walk together in unison. It can't just be some rogue thing that was implanted into Paul's writings or the New Testament and be the complete opposite of what the Lord was saying through his prophets in the Old Testament. Otherwise, it's not the word of God. Okay? And that's my thing. So there's about three pieces in the New Testament that have absolutely no corroboration or relevance to the Torah and to the Old Testament prophets, which is the Tanakh, the whole Old Testament. And that is the piece about reincarnation, which actually not about reincarnation, it's denying reincarnation. So Hebrews 9:27, it is appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment. And every Christian, when you bring up reincarnation, they will parrot that scripture back to you like a mantra, okay? But it doesn't make any sense because the entire Old Testament has multiple areas, which I have pulled out and are in this book, speaking of reincarnation, and that God is the one who does it. Okay. It actually says in 2 Samuel, I am the Lord. I bring you down to the grave and I bring you back and give you life again. The meaning of reincarnation, right?
Right.
Ezekiel 37, it literally describes the process of reincarnation. So like the word carne, which is in the word
Meat.
yes, flesh, meat, exactly. It's Latin. So the Hebrew talks about putting flesh on these old bones that are
Right.
dead, the dead Israelites. And he sees the valley of the dry bones. And he says to Ezekiel, I want you to prophesy over these dry bones because these bones are going to live again. This is the Lord speaking. Ezekiel 37. And he says, I'm going to put flesh on these bones, carne, flesh,
Mhm.
incarnation. I'm going to breathe life back into these bones. I'm going to put my spirit into these bones and I'm going to raise them up again to be a great army again. And that's the reincarnation of ancient Israel, which we can check off as a fulfilled prophecy because that began in 1948 when Israel got that land back. For 1800 years, it was in a drought. Nobody
Mhm.
in their right mind thought that they would ever come back to the land, but it was in the prophecies. So that began the beginning of the end time prophecies, which they call eschatology. So all the Christian eschatologists all agree that's the beginning when Israel became a state again, which is Ezekiel 37. And the great army, that's the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. And they are, even though they might be small, they're a mighty force to reckon with because they have all this technology. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is what I tell people about disclosure is don't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean,
Mhm.
like everyone is waiting with bated breath for the US government to spill the beans and tell us what they know. Don't hold your breath there. You know what I mean? Because it may not come from our government, meaning it may come from another government. Okay. And how do I know this? Because they tried. They wanted to disclose, Israel wanted to disclose in 2015, and they were told no. And then, of course, about
I am
Hayamisha.
a shed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so 5 years later in 2020, he comes out as a whistleblower.
Tell everybody who I am a shed is real quick.
Okay, he's a retired space chief with this long, illustrious career as the top of the Israeli hierarchy, overseeing all things technological space defense for Israel. And he's a physicist and an engineer and a professor, and he's had this long career. So he's 88 years old, octogenarian, and he thinks, I got nothing to lose here. He's proved himself, he's decorated and everything. And this is what happens to these octogenarians. They know that life is short and they're holding on to these secrets, and their conscience let them go until they leave something behind. And
Mhm.
and I say this all the time, if it weren't for the whistleblowers, we'd all be like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed you know what. So we have to honor what they're saying, even though it may not be the whole enchilada, but it is pieces. And the piece that he blew the whistle on are huge pieces. Like big pieces, not little ones.
Galactic Federation of Earth, I think you said.
Yes, yes. And he said that the United States and Israel are in working agreements with the Galactic Federation on Earth, and President Trump knows about it. and that they were sharing astronauts on these joint bases on Mars. Okay. So after he told the,
This is wild stuff, but when you have somebody of his level and his credibility and he says this, you're like, "Oh my God, what is going on here?" But he's not saying anything that like hasn't been out in the zeitgeist before, right? Like there's been other people that have said similar things to this, that there are factions working together and that other factions within our governments and other governments know about this. And there's some cooperation going on. So, yeah,
yes,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but we've heard this before.
yes, you're absolutely right. And that's a path to follow in disclosure because so what's interesting about what he said was that he said this in November 2020 to the Yedidoth Note, which is kind of the equivalent of the New York Times in Israel. And then those same journalists assisted him and corroborated a book, which came out in December of 2020, which is only available in Hebrew paperback. They didn't put it on PDF, so you can't stick it through a translator. It's called The Universe and Beyond the Horizon. And he's an astrophysicist. So it's a lot of, lofty things about the universe and astrophysics, but there's about 13 pages in there making reference to UFO crashes around the world, not just here. Okay. He talks about one in Russia. He talks about the Magenta, Italy crash in 1930 that David Grush told our Congress about in July of 23. So that's a corroboration. The only difference was that Chaim Eshed was speaking of it from its original event, which was that the Germans came and cleaned everything up from Magenta, Italy, and took it back to Germany. And of course, that was during, at the beginning, 1932, there was, World War II happened. America and Russia were allies and they were the victors, and the victors get the spoils of war. So they got that. So by the time Grush is telling Congress about that event, he's saying it like, yeah, we have that, like meaning us, Americans.
Hmm.
Americans have it. They reverse engineered it, but it has because they got it from the Germans.
Hmm.
So that was a corroborating story that Chaim Eshed wrote in his book.
There's one more thing I wanted to touch on before, if you want to share some of your slides, I'd love for you to do that. But there's one more thing that you write about in your book that, I've been trying to get somebody from the University of Virginia on to talk about their Department of Perceptual Studies, I believe. They've been documenting children's cases of recognizing past personalities. And you bring up, I think, one of these in the book. Do you want to tell everybody about that case? I think it was James, the little boy, because this is an important point because we're talking about some wild things here, but reincarnation. Yet we have a university here in the United States that's been studying this, thousands of cases of children remembering past personalities, and they're not just like talking willy nilly here. They've gone back and they've found these other people that are oftentimes obscure people. They're not like well known people. A lot of this work was done before the internet. And so, do you want to just talk a little bit about that case you present there? Because I think that's a really powerful one.
Yes. Well, I presented the case of Anne Barbaro, and she was a Swedish girl born in Sweden to Christian parents. And as a young child, she kept telling her parents that she was back from another life. She had all this memory in great detail of writing and of basically being killed by the Nazis. She was in the Holocaust. Turns out she was Anne Frank. And Anne Frank was was a famous Holocaust. Well, she didn't actually survive, but she had all these writings,
The
the diary.
Diaries of Anne Frank.
Yes. And Anne and Barbara, she's a writer. She has so she's reincarnated with the same gifts, the same talents. The only difference is that she was born into a Christian family, not a Jewish family, which means you can say, well, when you reincarnate, you're not stuck in the same thing. You
Mhm.
change religions, you can change genders, you can be a man in one life and a woman in the next, and vice versa. But her memory was so detailed that her parents just thought it was her imagination because she was, such a young child. So eventually they took her to Amsterdam. And when she got off out of the car, she led them to her old house where she used to live. She knew every stone. She knew which way to turn. She goes up, and now it's a tourist attraction, the old house of Anne Frank. So people
Mhm.
go up the stairs and they see this room where she used to live and dwell and hide. And she had all these pictures. So she goes up to the room, and there's a tourist guide there with her parents. And she says, "Where are all my pictures? Like 10 years old, where's my picture?"
Mhm.
That's when they all looked at her and thought, "Whoa, how did you know that?" She had never
Mhm.
been before. Nobody taught her. Nobody told her. So all this got documented by the doctors. But it was that event that the parents finally realized she was telling the truth. It wasn't her imagination because she knew such great detail about the pictures on the wall. And so when she said, "Where are my pictures?" And the tourist guide said, "Oh, we had to take them down because people were touching them because we're going to put them back up under a plexiglass to protect them." So they were all astonished by the little girl. Like, how did she know about that? When the penny dropped and they realized she really was the reincarnation of Anne Frank. And so what I did in the book is I did this comparison because, when you reincarnate, you come back with your talents, your gifts. And she had exactly the same talents and gifts that Anne Frank had as a writer.
Yeah, and it's interesting, sometimes we have, like we call them child prodigies, maybe they're, like, 3 and 4 years old, and they come out playing the piano, like, what is that? Come on, I mean,
Exactly.
there's talent is one thing, but then, there's these other things that are just, like, next level, and so, it
Yeah.
seems to me like they would be carrying over some information from somewhere else, right? That's the logical interpretation of something like that.
So that it's a skill. I mean, there's talent and then there's skill. We teach, they go, "Well, talent's not going to get you far. You need to do your practices. You need to discipline." And they had worked on it in another life. So it comes naturally, like playing the piano. Like I learned how to play the piano as a child, but I could never play without looking at music. And I was always thought, how do you do it? I knew people that were able to just, they couldn't even read music, and
Mm,
they're singing all these songs as if they're like, maestros. I mean, that's old past life skill, practicing. And then they come in and it's like second nature. Music or art, or writing or science. And sometimes people don't complete things. There's like, you come back from a
unfinished business.
exactly. Okay, so I was telling you, okay, Cosmic Slingshot is the second of a trilogy. Covenants, I started this in Covenants, talking about alien implants and spiritual limitation devices. This has been my work for, sidebar type stuff because it has to do with healing and coming out of getting free from the bondages of abductions. So I'm no longer involved with the gray aliens anymore because I got free of all this, and this is how. And the Lord showed me about implants and that there are implants for all different things that the aliens stick into our etheric bodies. So this is just like the cover. This is my first book. And it shows the aliens sticking implants into women. Part of this has to do with contracts. So soul contracts that we make in past lives. And some people don't even realize that they're making agreements with these dark forces because they're masked, and they masquerade as religious people or cult leaders or politicians or all of the above. And so people get involved, and then they kind of like it becomes some sort of Faustian contract where they sell their soul for power, fame, or money, etc. You know the old story. But
Mhm.
and that follows a soul into the next life, which is called spiritual legal ground. So there's an old Hermetic philosophy, as above, so below. So just as we have laws on earth, there are laws in heaven. Just as we have courts on earth, there are courts in heaven. So when we make contracts and agreements on earth, they follow. And it doesn't matter like what kind of contract that is. It like, let's just take the marriage contract for an example. That's a covenant. It's also a contract. So if two people contract together, partner together, become part of the covenant of marriage, then that can also follow them into the next life. Meaning you can, you reincarnate with your soulmates. And that's what the Torah says. And you also reincarnate with your enemy. Okay?
Mhm.
It's also what the Torah says. And why is that? Why does God put you back with your mates and your enemies? Because the purpose is to work things out. There's multiple purposes, but one of the things is to work things out, make peace, learn how to love your enemies. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. You can't do that without God. Learn how to forgive. I mean, forgiveness is a superpower. So we come in with these soul contracts. Then the aliens, they manipulate stuff through genetic tampering and DNA and energy bodies. So this is just an illustration of like the energy body. And so the one of the things that book 1 and 4 and then the Cosmic Slingshot is that the human lifespan. So I'm of the belief that the fall of humankind was not just about a bunch of curses, and that's a piece, but that it was a DNA downgrade. Okay, that the Anunnaki didn't create us; they genetically downgraded us because the original blueprint was that we were created here.
For shorter lifespans, is that what this was?
Yes, yes, you got that. That we were created in the image and likeness of the gods. I mean, there it is right there. That's the Genesis verse about creation. And it's all in its plurality. We had it all. And Adam and Eve, the Evademic race, they were walking in the Garden of Eden and they had all 12 strands of DNA firing up, operating. And it says they walked and they talked with God and they had eyes to see and ears to hear and they saw everything. And also those early humans lived to be like 900 and change. So Methuselah lived to be 969, which is the oldest living person in the Bible. Then the floods of Noah came and nobody lived past 80 or 90. Our telomeres go up to 120. Most
Mhm.
people are lucky if they live to be in their 80s, right?
Mhm.
So something happened, and that has to do with genetic tampering. And as a result of that, the alien who harvest soul energies and soul memories and outright souls. I mean, this whole thing about, battle over our souls is very real. The battle is very real. I want to connect a dot for people in your audience, probably who know who Bob Lazar is. And
Mhm.
Bob Lazar told George Knapp in 1989 in an interview, which is out there, how the aliens view us humans. And he said the aliens see us as containers. So that's a thesaurus word for vessels. The Bible
Mhm.
says we're vessels. So we're either, and C.S. Lewis, I love this quote. He says, you're either owned by God, countered by Satan. There is no neutral ground. So even people who are blinded by unbelief and they're atheists, there really are no real atheists because as soon as they see the Lord, that's the end of their atheism.
Right.
They're cured, okay? But there's unbelief. So unbelief blinds people. But even those people who don't believe in anything, they're not empty vessels. They're being used by someone, okay? And how are they being used is through, let me get this, alien implantation. This is just my little I'm a writer, not an artist, but this is just to illustrate how our energy body works. Most of us can't see it unless we really work on it and go into a deep meditation and start to alter our perceptions. But if we had all of our 12 strands of DNA firing, we would be able to see it. Well, guess what? The aliens can see it. They can see us as we really are, these energy bodies. Okay. It's my stick figure. It's not supposed to be pretty, but it's supposed to illustrate the fact that our energy body has multi layers. Okay. And so it's like, I am not in my body. My body is in me. Because when this flesh ceases to exist, I will continue. And that is oversoul, the energy body, the light body, whatever. There's all these names for it, the etheric body. And that's where the implants go. Because we know, and this is like, get into Star Trek stuff, because this is what aliens do when they abduct, is they take people's energy body. So like, let's say you have a couple that's sleeping in the bed together, and one person gets taken and the other one is left behind, and their bodies are both there. And then they come back and they go, oh, I was taken up on a ship. This happened to me. That happened to me. Look at my body. There's bruises here. There's blood here. There's scratches here. There's evidence, but they never left the bed. So how is that possible? Think Star Trek, the demolecularization and the remolecularization of the body. You go through that portal.
Transporter.
The transporter, yeah. So it's kind of like that. They steal the energy body, they remolecularize it on the ship, they do what they need to do. Okay, so everybody's in these different programs that get abducted. So this is a real thing of these implants. And this book was written anonymously by an abductee just known as Number 17. So why I have this here is because I had that. I don't have it anymore. But the nasal implant is a common one for those who are tagged to be used in the alien human hybridization program. And so this book talks all about that. And this paper, which is the scientific paper, okay, from this college in France, talks about it. So this is a thing. And it's not just tracking devices. It has to do with what you're being tagged for. So not everyone is being used as an incubator or is in the hybridization program. There are others that have different implants at different parts of their body, and they're being used to change society, okay, to muddy the waters, to confuse, let's say, gender confusion. So back in the day, in the psychiatric journals, they called it gender dysmorphia, okay? Like, this is a thing, sleep paralysis. So most abductees report on this. Now, this happened to me so many times as a child. I would have to wait for the sun to come up to get out of bed at night because I was just like paralyzed. And it's a form of hypnosis, and it's like being under a spell. And they do this to people. And it's not just physical. They also they put something on your speech that you can't talk about it. You can't say, and that's why so many people go to all these doctors to get hypnotized and go through regression so that they can get it out. All right. So that's the thing. And then, of course, there's like the whole needle thing. This is something I suffered from. Like, as a child, I would faint at the sight of a needle anytime they would give me an injection, like for vaccines and stuff like that. They'd have to I fainted. I would pass out. They would have to carry me out of the office. And that went on until I was 25 years old, until I consciously made a decision. I got to get over it, because one day I want to have a baby and they're going to stick needles in me and I can't handle it. So I volunteered for this Cornell Medical University low dose birth control study where they had to take my blood once a month. And I had these two East Indian doctors, a male and a female. And at the time I was in the astronomy class and talking astronomy and astrology, and they loved that subject. So they kept me awake by talking about the stars to me. One
Mm.
up my arm, the other one, they gave me 7-Up. They kept me awake and they helped me overcome the fainting, which is like a word for it, trypanophobia, which is
Mhm.
needles. And abductees all have this. Why? Because the Greys are using this. So this we can, you can expound on this into our medical field. But this, where did this come from with me? I had to find the root of it in my past life. Is what the Nazis did to me, because I died as a child in my last life. And they experimented on me and they stuck all kinds of needles in me. And I was born into this life absolutely terrified of needles. I'm not anymore because I mind over matter. I overcame it. But
Mhm.
part of the abduction experience, believe it or not.
Mm.
And so this is someone I would recommend you talking to, Evie Largan. She's become a really good friend of mine. She wrote this book in the 90s, and these are all these common symptoms of abductions. But the reason why she's calling it the love bite is because what they're doing, remember, their MO is soul harvesting. So they don't care if you're happy or you're miserable. Whatever they can do to trigger your energy, to get a rise out of you, is what they do. So they put people together, and this is a thing. This is something she uncovered in the 90s. And it is
Mm.
a thing where you're put together with someone on the ships. The aliens do it. You really have nothing in common on Earth. It's not someone you would like cultivate a relationship with. You can have cultural differences, all kinds of differences, but you have this fatal attraction to this,
Mm.
this undeniable sexual thing. And it's a thing. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So, and what happens? It always ends in misery or breakup, and everybody's miserable. And who's benefiting? The aliens are harvesting our energy. So, why are they doing this? Is because they can create bodies, they can create avatars, they can create hybrids, they can mix and match DNA, but they cannot create a soul. They are
So they're
not.
stealing some of that soul energy in order to animate some sort of cloned hybrid.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going on. And this is old. This has been going on since the Anunnaki came and downgraded us. And so remember, I was telling you about spiritual legal ground. So because this is something that, like religious stuff, I was like how the Christians say, oh, you're all born in sin, right? That statement. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how is that possible? Like a baby, so innocent, so perfect, so pure. How could that be sin? How could that be born in sin? This comes from genetic manipulation, because the word sin is archery term for error. It means a mistake, like you missed the mark. Like
Mhm.
you missed the mark, that's a sin. And that's where the word got into the vernacular. So not like, oh, the baby did something bad. It's that
Mhm.
the baby was born with 2 strands of DNA, not 12. Baby was born in error because there's a genetic downgrade that is part of this curse that the Messiah promises to restore us back to our original 12 strands of DNA, which I call glory bodies, superhuman, metahuman, meaning then we have that vision again. We're able to see each other as we really are, the energy body, what's operating behind us. They took
Mhm.
it away. And that's why people walk through this life like they're blind. They can't
Mhm.
see. And those who are awake, to be fair, work really hard, all right, meditating and consciousness changing and diet and all that kind of stuff. But we're still limited. Let's face it.
Mhm.
Okay. So here's another piece. So that's DNA. And this is called the cruciform implant. This is the religious implant. And this is in the energy field of all these really intense, fundamental religious people on all religions, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, even New Agers who like, oh, I don't do religion, but they become fundamental in whatever it is that they're doing. So I saw this, okay, in the energy field, in, like as like one of those things that I showed you in my stick figure here, like these different types of implants that are lodged into an energy field. And of course, they put them up the nose into the brain. Okay, the medulla oblongata, they control with brain implants. But this one is in the energy field, and then it shows up exactly. This shape is from the movie Mission Impossible. This was the truth is transition, but it wasn't about an implant. It was a key to that opened up a nuclear submarine. That was the whole plot of the movie. Form. And it was 3D. And that's exactly what is in these energy bodies. And what this also does is it causes people to like want to be like, it's a victim consciousness. It's like they want to be martyred. It creates that, what do you call it? The, where they start bleeding out of their
stigmata.
Stigmata. It does all these things. And you can't make this stuff up. So the aliens have been manipulating us through religious implants, and it creates trauma. See, so trauma is something that is also an implant, because this is why people keep repeating things. And it's like a pattern they just keep going back to. They can't get out of it. It's like a rat in a wheel, just going over again because of it's an implant to traumatize us. And this isn't some woo-woo stuff, because this is stuff that they actually do in satanic ritual abuse. Okay, which is, it's ugly. I don't even like talking about it, but it's a reality. So, how they terrorize children because they're after the adrenaline. So when you're terrorized, your adrenal glands pump out all this adrenaline. And
is this the adrenochrome? But they're harvesting adrenochrome. It's like the adrenaline gets into the blood and they drink the blood. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes. Yes. So
I've heard this.
Whether they're drinking the blood and they have to kill them first, obviously, right? Terrorize them, and then they kill them so that the blood has all this adrenochrome dumped into it at the time of death, and then they harvest the blood. It's very vampiric, it's parasitic, but it's a thing, okay? So that's the physical side of it. Then there's the energetic side of it, like this piece, right? They're putting this into the energy body to keep people locked in cycles of trauma and drama. Because what does it do? Causes us to emote, and whether it's passion, anger, or passion, sex, or other kinds of, it's like heightened and energy, heightened sensitivity. And the more PTSD just keeps repeating itself. And then there's religious trauma. So all in my books, as you know, because I think you have one or two of them, they're all dedicated to all those who have been wounded by religion. Because, we can't, no pun intended here, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So what's important is our relationship to our creator, okay? The religious stuff has to be put in its perspective. If it's the other way around, which it is often, then people lose their way because they're not in a daily, intimate relationship with the creator, which is what Adam and Eve were in. And if people want to get their DNA back or ascend, as they talk about over the ascension, they have to talk to God. You have to talk to God, and God listens. Unbelief is what puts us in, it puts the block and the alien, all these implants. I got free of it. I had this up my nose all my life. And until I had my NDE in 2010, February 7th, 2010, I had a near-death experience. I saw Yeshua, and it wasn't instant healing. It took a year and a half for me to recover from what caused, I had a heart attack, and it was caused by my adrenal glands. It was adrenal exhaustion. And I was being traumatized on a regular basis for 15 months. And I lost so much sleep that if you don't sleep, your adrenal glands just pump out that you run
They
out of it.
run wild.
Yes, you run out of adrenaline, and instead they pump out cortisol. So I had way too much cortisol in my blood because I wasn't sleeping, and it caused my heart to stop. So I didn't have a heart problem, thank God. I don't have like an organ issue or anything like that. It was
Mhm.
it was cortisol. It was the adrenal gland. So I had to learn how to sleep again. And in that whole healing process, this implant that I had up my right nostril all my life disappeared. And he took that out, and so did the abductions. Everything stopped. So that's why I can talk about it now, because this is a thing. And
One of the things I wanted to bring up here, Ella, is just you're talking about like the etheric body. I just wanted to let the audience know. I mean, I have a friend who I've had on the podcast before. She's going to come back on, but she is certified. She's a certified healer, and she's shown me a lot of pictures you were showing with the etheric body, and she breaks it down very well. And so, I'm pretty aware that this is for sure a thing. I
yes,
can't see that kind of stuff, but I think there are people out there that can see it on people. They can see shades of colors around you, and they
yes,
can tell if you're sick or if you have chronic pain. I don't know what that is. I can't do it, but I think there are people that can definitely do that.
yes. And, we can go into altered states. Sometimes it's like you can't control it. Sometimes it just bleeds through. Like that's what happens to me. Like I can't really control it. It just comes and goes. So I get a glimpse. It's not the whole enchilada, but I know it's enough. Like you just need one gulp to taste the ocean. It's a thing. But it's like, how do you get free from it? This is their whole thing, that they have been manipulating our DNA. This is the Anunnaki, the whole Anunnaki caused the fall of humankind, which is we call the curse. Okay. So we're heading into a time, this is the good news, that in the age to come, it is promised, it is prophesied, and it is promised that humankind will be restored. And so will the earth, and so will the animals, because they're also under the same curse. And we will live to be 1,000 years again, meaning we won't die for 1,000 years. And also, what happens after that is that it's also promised and prophesied that he ends death. So if there's no more death, then there can be no more rebirth.
I see. This is fascinating, Ella. I'm gonna have to have you back on to talk more about this. This is absolutely amazing stuff. Like I told you in the beginning, I think this is a major part of the conversation that doesn't get talked about enough, which is the religious aspect connected to reincarnation, that is absolutely connected to the UFO phenomenon. There's large chunks of the puzzle that people aren't talking about. So I really want to thank you for all your work you've done. Your book, The Cosmic Slingshot, is really an amazing work. I'd love to have you back on sometime. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and I would love to talk to you again.